So, let's just say 2025 has been a very interesting year. And unfortunately, not for a lot of the right reasons. Though like a lot of people during times of uncertainty and oppression, I tend to go back to a lot of media I have liked over the years. Whether it be stuff I haven't experienced, or stuff I want to experience again. There's an appeal to watching something comforting and enlightening that help make things a little bit better. As for today's video topic, I'm going to be covering something different. Not a 90s animated series, not a recent movie or director's filmography, but instead a film that is 100% the definition of classic cinema. May I present to you The Sound of Music.
The hills are alive with the sound of music.
Yes, 1965's The Sound of Music from Robert Wise is a terrific piece of film history. A timeless movie that paved the way for musicals to be one of the most notable kinds of movies out there, along with continuing to make Julie Andrews a household name. With numerous Academy Awards, including Best Picture, The Sound of Music is a movie that I've grown up with that I've always admired. And nowadays, not only does it hold up, but it's even better in a lot of ways than what I remember it being as a kid. It truly is a timeless film for all time. It's also a movie that takes place during World War II, where the main characters have to flee the country to escape the horrors of fascism and the Nazi Party. Yeah, a lot of people tend to forget that this is actually based on a true story. A story that I feel is very relevant to today, especially if you're living in America. Not only do I want to bring attention to this movie for that reason, and also to celebrate its 60th anniversary, but I seriously point to this movie as being one of the big influences to why I'm such a huge film lover today. So, to end the year off on a potentially hopeful note, I want to discuss one of my absolute favorite films, so then I wouldn't feel so bad with The Sound of Music. Now, as I mentioned earlier, The Sound of Music is based on a true story, as the Von Trapp family was a real family of singers that traveled across Europe during World War II. They initially lived in Austria, with Maria and Georg von Trapp being married during the time of the Third Reich's invasion of the country, leading to the family to eventually flee the country out of a fascist state. Their stories were told a lot throughout the year, eventually being adapted into a Broadway musical known as The Sound of Music in 1959 by Rodgers and Hammerstein. 6 years later, the show was adapted into a feature film directed by Robert Wise and starring Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer. The film was received incredibly well when it was first released, being a movie at the height of the musical genre's popularity, and being a commercial and critical success as well. While the film was very well received, it should be noted that much like any adaptation, changes are made to the original source material. Main thing to note is that there were 10 Von Trapp children, not 7, with some of the kids and personalities being changed altogether. Certain things like Georg and Maria's marriage occurring years before the Nazi takeover, and the family being more musically inclined prior to Maria's arrival to the Von Trapp household. These changes actually do kind of make sense in terms of making a certain type of narrative function well for the story being written. However, when adapting real events into a story, you have to thread a line on what should be changed and what shouldn't, because after all, you are trying to represent a real person's life. So making any change could be seen as disrespectful, especially depending on how it's executed. Fortunately, The Sound of Music still portrays the events with respect, as the real Maria Von Trapp was mostly okay with the changes and found it to be a decent retelling of her own life. In fact, she even makes a background cameo within the film. Weirdly enough, one thing she had been on record saying that she stated was one of the more inaccurate parts of her life is that the movie portrays her as a lot nicer than how she apparently was to the family in actuality. Very odd to consider, but then again, it tends to be difficult to see Julie Andrews as ridiculously strict and cold. Regardless of what changes were made to retell the stories of these real-life people, the The Sound of Music has stuck within the pop culture, being referenced as one of the great musicals of cinema. The songs have stuck around everywhere.
Go, a deer, a female deer.
And the movie has been parodied countless of times, as you probably have seen at least one Family Guy episode where they make fun of the movie. Which, fun fact, this is also Seth MacFarlane's favorite movie, which, say what you will about the guy, but that's pretty based.
Oh, that is bull.
This film is still referenced, but I know there are plenty of people who might not be as familiar with the movie, or even the themes they talk about within the film, and I figured this video would be a good way to encourage more people to check this movie out. I do recommend watching the film before this video, if you haven't already, as this will cover the movie's plot with spoilers galore, but it is totally worth it. However, I do have to give a bit of a disclaimer, as there are a couple of factors that could deter someone to watch a movie like The Sound of Music. The two biggest things to note that will probably make some people uncomfortable are the fact that this is a 3-hour movie and it's a musical. Now I know some of you are shrugging this movie off instantly based on one of those two elements, or even both of them. These things can be a major turnoff for a lot of people. However, I am going to come to this movie's defense and say that this movie is still worth watching in spite of that. With it being nearly 3 hours long, I should state that just because the movie is long doesn't make it bad. But I understand the concern a little bit going into a movie over 2.5 hours. If not done carefully, we get a movie that doesn't retain the intentions of the audience and will feel like an excessive waste of time.
It's too long. You gotta be Delulu if you think people are gonna watch that.
I get not everyone can sit down and watch a 3-hour movie at the spur of the moment. Yet, when done right, a 3-hour movie can be every bit as captivating to the point you don't feel like time is wasted. The Sound of Music is definitely one of those movies for me, as this movie doesn't feel that long when watching it, as it managed to have so much charm and intrigue with all the songs and characters throughout its runtime. So, this is one of those long movies I say is incredibly worth watching. But if that still doesn't convince you to see this movie, then here's something that will make things a little bit easier. The movie actually has an intermission within its 3 hours. Yeah, there's an intermission that's the best time to go to the bathroom and take a quick break before you get to the second half of the film. Which, with how many people have panic attacks over any movie being over 2 hours, I'm still shocked more movie studios don't implement this nowadays. Honestly, it would be pretty helpful if they did. The other unappealing factor of The Sound of Music, for some people who might be watching it for the first time, is the simple fact that it's, well, a musical. This is a genre that tends to get a strong backlash whenever the topic comes up. Like, how many times have you watched a movie musical and you hear someone groan big time the second someone bursts into song?
They're singing! They're singing, Marge! Why aren't they killing each other?
This might be a bit of a bias for me, as I am actually someone who likes nearly every genre of movie, but musicals are ones I tend to really love. I've grown up with so many films with a lot of memorable soundtracks, with a ton of singing, and found a lot of them to still be great movies regardless. Hell, I even like a couple of musicals here and there that people don't like. Not to say that I think every musical is great. Not really a fan of this one. Sorry, Disney Channel fans. But when done right, it can be quite fun. For me, as long as the songs are good and the narrative is at least a tiny bit interesting, a musical can work for me. Though as a film lover, sometimes a musical can go really hard with its directing and storytelling. There are plenty of movies that, regardless of musical or not, they're just a classic film that everyone should see in general. The Sound of Music definitely fits in that category, as it's not only peak in terms of how it manages to be a movie musical, but there's a lot to appreciate, even outside the musical aspect of it. It's just one of those films where most people will tell you, even ones who aren't the biggest musical lovers, will say this is a must-see film. And I am right there with them. The Sound of Music takes the notion of being a musical and a long film, and has it not be that big of an issue due to how great the movie is. Now with all that out of the way, I think it really is time to talk about the movie itself, and why it has retained such a huge status as a cinematic classic. The film centers around a young woman named Maria, living her life as a nun in Austria. The downside is that compared to the other nuns, she's considered a bit of an outcast. She's not quite as punctual and on top of her responsibilities as the nuns expect her to be. It leads to some concern for her well-being, doing more so things on her own accord than following everything the nuns do. So, to teach her a lesson on becoming a better student, Maria is told that she will be a governess for Captain Georg von Trapp, a sea captain who recently has been widowed and is prepping to marry another woman to help raise his kids. Which, by the way, he has about as many children as Ramona Flowers has evil exes, with 7.
Kisses? 7 little kisses?
And Maria has to be the one to help raise them after recently losing their mother. She arrives at the place, finding out that Georg is a very strict father that disciplines his kids constantly, treating them more like his recruits when he was a sea captain than his own kids. This concerns Maria, as she feels the kids aren't being able to express themselves and have a fun, carefree life like actual kids. Instead of treating them with discipline, like Georg does, Maria instead tries to get to know the kids personally, and introduces them to so many fun things they weren't able to experience before in their lives. This leads to the children maintaining a much better relationship with Maria, and in turn, a better relationship with Georg von Trapp as the film progresses. There's even a bit of a love triangle between Georg, Maria, and the Baroness in the film, in the mix of all the things with the children, leading to the origins of how the Von Trapp family became the famous singers they were legendary for. The basic story does work quite nicely, as it's a very easygoing movie that anyone can watch and vibe with. There's something very earnest about watching a movie where not only do you see kids learning to experience joy in their lives, but even a bitter person who once lost love learning to experience joy again. It's a very uplifting movie in that sense alone. And the film consistently manages to be enjoyable throughout, with every song and set piece. Even though there is the strange fact that this is only the second time Julie Andrews played an Oscar-nominated role as a nanny within only a year.
Cheeky.
Yeah, strangely enough, Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music share nearly the same basic premise. A young woman, played by Julie Andrews, is essentially hired to be a nanny for these children, whose father is a little more strict, and losing his love for his kids. And throughout the movie, the father does eventually learn his ways, and appreciate the fun his children like to have. Very odd coincidence that happened. However, that's not to say The Sound of Music did this story poorly or worse than Mary Poppins. Some might prefer The Sound of Music due to its more grounded approach based on a real event as opposed to Poppins' fantasy. Yet, both have an identity to them, and you can argue Sound of Music does a little more than Mary Poppins story-wise. Especially since, even within the film, they both execute their basic story very differently. Where it took basically the entire runtime of Mary Poppins to have Mr. Banks have his character arc, Georg's arc is pretty much completed within the first hour of the film in terms of being a more loving father. Yet, even in spite of the resolution appearing sooner than one would expect, The Sound of Music still has a lot of plot points and elements that still make it a very engaging film. The main takeaway that really give this story substance are the characters. The leads in particular are some of the best classic movie leads in my humble opinion. Starting with Julie Andrews, she is incredible as Maria von Trapp. Goes without saying that her singing cannot be matched, and is one of the main hearts of the movie. Though, it really isn't just that. She portrays Maria as this very kind, incredibly optimistic person who is willing to learn and appreciate the many joys of life. She is a great role model for these kids who want affection from their dad so badly, but they don't know how outside of obeying his every command. She complements the family better as she does help Georg to be a better person. It's hard not to be charmed by Julie Andrews as an actress. It might be similar to Mary Poppins, but the fact that she played these characters so well back to back is a testament to her skill as an actress.
First of all, I would like to make one thing quite clear.
Yes?
I never explain anything.
Complementing her also is Christopher Plummer, who is also very iconic as the great Captain Georg von Trapp. Plummer was one of the late great actors, appearing in many movies throughout his long career. Some people nowadays might be more so familiar with him as the old guy from Knives Out.
So old. So
Really love drama, huh?
And Charles Muntz from Up.
Adventures out there.
And I should probably quickly mention that he was also the Duke of Owls in Rocket-Doodle.
Twiddly-dee, twiddly-dee. They're running out. They're running out. They're running out of battery.
Those are only a few of the many roles he has done. Yet, it's hands down his performance as Georg that he's best known for, despite the fact that the actor didn't care much for the film when it was first released, but he had grown to appreciate it up until his death in 2021. It's hard not to find Georg's art commendable, as it's the classic bitter character gains more compassion over time. Though admittedly, while Georg does start out as a character too stern for his own good, he is coming from an understandable place. He is someone who has lost his wife within the film, so there's some strong bitterness there that's making him colder than he needs to be. It's part of the reason why the relationship between him and Maria sticks out so well, because she brings back what he initially lost. And even before his big character arc, there are still a few very admirable things about Georg that makes him a good-natured character at his core. Because at the end of the day, he's more so a good person who did a bad thing at the very worst. All the stuff surrounding him, along with his relationship with Maria, I will go further when I get to more of the big themes of the film, but just know that these two are a quintessential Hollywood leading couple. Though the rest of the cast is no slouch either, as everyone does a good job here. The child actors are pretty good, feeling like real kids, though we don't get too much of their stories outside of Liesel, who was actually not a part of the real-life Von Trapp family, by the way. Yet, she does have the most to do, being the oldest and having the most time to bond with Maria, along with having a bit of a love interest with a guy named Rolf.
Evening. Rolf the dog.
No, not that Rolf.
Hello, Ed boys. Many doors, yes?
Not that Rolf either. Yeah, that's more like it. Unfortunately, Rolf does end up being kind of an antagonist, as the film does have a few characters that could be considered antagonistic in the film. Yet, it's kind of subtly, not outright obvious villains. The Baroness is considered one, being in opposition to Maria and Georg's relationship, being the lady in line to marry Georg. But she doesn't really become much of an active threat, or even a nuisance, to everyone in the film to be considered super villainous. Even when Georg essentially breaks up with her, she's like, okay, cool. Yet she does have some association with characters working for bigger threats, as she also appears a lot with Uncle Max, a guy who starts out kinda cool at first, that the kids all seem to be very excited at the idea of his arrival.
And Uncle Max.
But unfortunately, you kind of realize he does end up being a bit complicit in certain events going on at the time. I mean, he doesn't become quite as bad as Rolf, which...
Heil Hitler!
Yeah, more on him later. But he doesn't really help in the situations in the film. It's all stuff as stated, will be mentioned further when I talk about the history aspect of the movie being set in World War II, and also being about Nazis. But it's clear that this film is really good with its characters. A fairly decent sized cast that holds together so well by its lead. But it doesn't just stop there with the quality this movie has. The film is still very well shot and edited, with the cinematography showcasing the beauty of Austria in so many shots, and the film goes from scene to scene so smoothly. This really does feel like one of the grand musicals, and that's something that I feel is incredibly important when talking about this movie, as what better thing to talk about with The Sound of Music more than anything else is the soundtrack itself. I mean, it's in the title of the damn movie after all. Why wouldn't it? I think it's fair to assume a movie with that title would be known for its music. In terms of classic movie soundtracks, this one has been in the public consciousness for about 60 years now. Even if you have never seen the movie, you have probably heard at least one of the songs at one point or another. That's how iconic these songs are on their own. But even within the film, they work so well. The music feels natural within the film compared to other movies, where it feels totally okay for a character to break out into song, as the film is earnest with its world building in that regard. It's unapologetically a musical right from its first scene, with that grand shot of Julie Andrews singing. I can't help but love these songs, and they've always been a huge part of my life. Considering how this movie ranks up there with some of the very best musicals, I think it would be a great idea to do something I haven't done in a while. Like with my Frozen and Nightmare Before Christmas video, I feel obligated to rank the songs in this movie. After all, this is one of the most famous, if not the most iconic Hollywood musical of all time. So it would be fair to discuss all the songs and see how they would rank. I feel all these songs are great in their own right, so not really a bad one here. This is more based on what I consider to be the absolute best this movie has to offer. So without further ado, let's get started with the weakest song in the whole movie.
Climb every mountain.
Okay, a bit of an easy choice for a lot of people, as I've seen this one highlighted as the worst song in the movie in the past. Not to say it's a bad song, in fact, it's still pretty iconic, even being the song to end the movie off on. It has its purpose in the film being the inspirational song for Maria to continue on her journey during the midway point with the nun. It's an important song that does have a great message about trying to move on and keep moving forward. Where a lot of people, including myself, might get a little annoyed with is that the operatic singing might feel a bit excessive. It works, and I think the lady does a good job, but if you're not used to operatic music, this might be hard to get used to. Still, I wouldn't call it a bad song by any means. It's just my least favorite of the bunch. Nevertheless, it's a great soundtrack regardless.
A female deer.
A very popular song from this movie, and it's hard not to see why, as it's about songs themselves. Maria teaches the children about the notes to sing with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Which, how does that go again?
Go!
A deer, a female deer,
Right.
a drop of golden sun, a name I call myself,
Far!
a long, long way to run,
So?
a needle pulling thread, a note to follow so, a drink with jam and bread. Which brings us back to
Go!
It's a very easy message to have, and the song rings quite well, though I will admit it does get a little repetitive at points. Like the first half of the song is just the same verse of do, re, mi. I get it, it's the point, but it might feel a bit much. At least till the second half of the song adds more lyrics and music to it. And it's a nice segment seeing all these kids having fun through learning how to sing with Maria. Really memorable, and nice beginner's lessons on the notes to sing. So, a good song.
Password is Maria. Maria.
The song based after the title character, as it's about the nuns singing about how strange and different Maria is compared to the rest of them. The easiest song to compare this to is Belle from Beauty and the Beast, as is a song of characters singing about how peculiar the main character is. Turns out in this case, she's an independent, outspoken woman that's different from everyone else. Oh, how terrifying! Though to me, that makes her more awesome. So these guys need to learn to see the good in her. Though the song itself is pretty memorable, the melody is nice, and it helps gives an idea of who the character of Maria is. Certainly does a good job establishing things for the film, and soon enough we get more glimpses at how good this character is. Fortunately, this Maria had a much better fate than the other Maria the song could have been for.
Oh, how you solve a problem like Maria.
Maria!
You are going on, fellas will fall in line.
Another significant song from The Sound of Music, as this one deals with the other main couple that appears in the movie. Sung by Liesl and Rolf, as this is their little love ballad, because these youngsters are so in love. In actuality though, 16 going on 17 has an alternate title I like to give it, and that's called the Trad Wife Song. Yeah, think about it. It's all about Rolf marrying her and basically being the breadwinner of the family and taking care of her, while she acts very young, expecting him to do most of the work, while she stays at home, living her life as his wife. So there's a bit of troublesome nature with this song based on context. Honestly, just the main crutch of the song can easily rub people the wrong way, considering that it's also all about Rolf, who is over 18, mind you, talking about how excited he is to see Liesl get older, who is 16, going on 17, mind you.
How old is she?
So yeah, problematic nature of it. Yet him going for underage girls isn't even the worst thing about Rolf.
Heil Hitler!
Yeah, more on that later. Yet because of that questionable angle, why is this song not that low on the list? Is it because it has a good melody to it? Well, that is part of it. I mean, this whole melody is really nice to listen to, even in spite of the lyrics. But what makes this song a bit better is thankfully the movie actually doesn't condone it. Not just within the story, but the song actually has a reprise in the second half of the film, with Maria and Liesl singing it. It has a much more positive and better outlook, with Maria telling Liesl that it will be better for her to wait for love when the time is right, instead of just wishing for a fantasy. In other words, moral of the story, don't be jailbait.
Wait a year.
I would like to sing for you now a love song.
One of the more slower songs this movie has to offer, as Georg von Trapp does end up having a song to sing in this film. It's a neat thing to see after his change of heart. The downside is that's not Christopher Plummer singing the song.
Edelweiss.
In the film, he was actually dubbed over by Bill Lee, so it might be a tiny bit disappointing that not all of the actors in this movie were able to sing, despite being one of the most iconic musicals. It's kind of the reason why it's lower on this list for me, despite the fact the song is referenced quite a bit as one of the great songs in this movie. For good merit, as it is technically about a flower in Austria and how beautiful it is. Learning to appreciate the beauty of everything. It's a good tune and a good moment for the character, especially more so when the song gets a reprise towards the end of the film. He sings the song with the family joining him, as this time it's more to represent his loyalty to Austria after finding out that he is going to leave the country after this performance. Who is he performing for, and why is he leaving the country? All of that will come later, but it serves as a significant song in the film. It has a lot of heart, even being the last song Roger and Hammerstein wrote together due to Hammerstein's unfortunate passing due to cancer. It's a song that's worth hearing to know about the beautiful things that bloom and grow.
High on a hill was a lonely goat herd.
A song that can be either really liked or disliked, depending on the person. This song is the most distant from the story itself, as Uncle Max apparently was able to rent out a puppet show for the Von Trapp family. The kids and Maria decided to perform with these puppets for this song about a lonely Gother and a bunch of other figures you would see in old Austria. As someone who appreciates puppetry, of course I would be interested in this sequence, and I like it quite a bit. Speaking of puppets, this was also the song used in the Muppet Show episode featuring Julie Andrews, so that's always rad to hear.
You know, I saw the movie twice.
Though your enjoyment may vary on if you find these puppets appealing. because I've heard some people could be kind of weirded out or creeped out by them. I'm not one of those people myself, but I can kind of see why if you're not used to string wooden puppets. But if you are, there's some fun to be had with this song. Not the most tied into the rest of the story kind of song, but an enjoyable little romp about a goather falling in love.
Hey, on the hill was a lonely goat herd. Hee-hoo.
So long, farewell. Goodbye.
Another really fun one, and a good little song that the children sing to say goodnight to the party guests at their home. It's bedtime, and each of the kids give a small little goodbye. This one works for the film as it manages to be the one that highlights the kids the most. Each one have their own unique verse as they go away one by one, and each of them are memorable in their own way.
I'd like to stay and taste my first champagne. Yes?
No.
It goes on till the last of the children sing their little goodbye as it's off for bed, and it's such a sweet little tune. Even gets a bit of a reprise with Maria and Georg at a performance they do later on in the film. Not much else to say except goodbye.
It is the sound of a fish. No, wait, check that. I am wrong.
Definitely significant to the film indeed, as the song that shares the movie's title certainly has to be memorable. And man, what a way to open a movie, with that grand overhead shot of Austria, zooming into Julie Andrews singing about how music can bring life. It really is held together mostly with Julie Andrews singing, and it's a great introduction to not only the character, but the kind of movie we're watching. It sets this film up perfectly as a musical, bringing us a very beautiful sequence, and why music is so important to the main character. I think anyone would instantly recognize this sequence due to how much the scene is used to promote the movie. It even influenced many other big movies later on. That's how you know it's a classic scene. Sets everything up perfectly, and gets you in the right mood for maybe one of the best musicals ever made.
I have confidence in sunshine. I have confidence in rain.
Honestly, a personal favorite of mine that I don't think gets enough credit. It's one of the main songs Julie sings as a solo, and it sort of serves as an I want song. However, in the case of this, it's something that she already has, and the song is about her discovering it. She's nervous about the prospects of watching over these 7 children, but realizes she knows that she can excel if she just believes in herself. So she reassures herself that she has confidence to accomplish this daunting task. It has an uplifting melody throughout, after a big dramatic beginning. It's one of those songs that's really good about making you feel good about yourself during a stressful situation. A pure, for lack of a better term, confidence booster, to say the least. And my god, Julie Andrews just nails it in terms of vocal performance. Having so much energy throughout her entire walk, she really showcases the confidence she truly has, even when mistakenly tripped during the end of the song. It's such a really good mood upper of a tune that really is one of my personal favorite songs in the entire movie. Although there might be another song that could be a better candidate for not just a favorite song, but also a favorite thing.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens.
Oh man, this is an iconic song. Maybe even the most memorable song in the whole movie. It certainly gives out the best vibes the movie has to offer, with a very upbeat tune and whimsical feel, as this song occurs right as a thunderstorm happens, scaring the kids, to which Maria suggests a coping mechanism for them. That is, when she gets upset or frightened, a way to help her feel less so is to think about her favorite things. And that's exactly what the song is all about. How the things you love can really help you feel better, even in the worst of moods. I mean, how can it not be good advice? I can certainly think of things I love and feel better once thinking about them. For example, Sonic, Scott Pilgrim, Cartoon Network. See? Better already. Now you guys try it too.
The Muppets.
A virtual boy.
The American reality television series Survivor, three-legged dogs, tripod dogs, some would say, film, good book, Nicole Kidman.
John Goodman shirtless and John Goodman shirtless.
Deltarune chapters with dates of release. These are a few of my favorite things.
Roblox, Hello Kitty, and of course my family.
John Goodman shirtless and John Goodman shirtless.
Donuts with sprinkles and crocodile kisses. Watching cartoons and then washing the dishes.
Sushi and dancing to music that swings.
These are a few of my favorite things.
John Goodman shirtless and John Goodman shirtless. Those are all of my favorite things.
See, it works so well. Julie's voice is so great, the orchestra is fantastic, and it's also just really nice to see the children actually be cheerful and free like they should. Will always be a highlight of the whole movie, and I think there's a good reason why this song is beloved from this movie. Why else did they use it in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?
These are a few of my favorite things.
But amazing as that song is, it doesn't quite top for me what actually might be the best song in the whole film, and probably the most unlikely choice as well. I have to admit, even for me, I am kind of surprised at myself that this, of all songs, made the top choice. Mostly because when I was younger, this would rarely appear as one of my favorite songs from the movie. Something Good did serve the story well when I saw this movie as a kid, but it's not nearly as upbeat or catchy as a lot of the other songs in this movie. I would always think about Favorite Things or Do Re Mi before this song cause it doesn't feel quite as popular. But in more recent memory for me, I have found so much beauty in Something Good as the last major original song to appear in The Sound of Music. It's a calm tune about Maria confessing her love to Georg von Trapp. It's the main love ballad of the movie, but it is executed so well in every aspect. Obviously the orchestration is beautiful and the vocals are great with Julie and even not Christopher Plummer singing in this song so well. But the themes of the tune are important. Maria is in a bit of disbelief that something this incredible could happen to her. She was burdened with some unfortunate things in her life to the point where she doesn't think anything special like this could happen. But she feels because she lived her life and tried her best to be good, she believed that she must have done at least something to deserve such a beautiful moment. This song really touches a core inside her character that gives her layers. Layers that I actually think make her very relatable as a character. As someone who's made mistakes in the past and someone who's reflect on a lot of stuff that I've done wrong and maybe even had some trauma with it. There is always that sense that something good could come along. When it does, it might feel unexpected or maybe even undeserved. But because something good has happened to yourself in a time where maybe you feel the most doubtful about it, clearly you must have done something right. If someone is willing to give you a chance because of all the good you have done. And that's exactly what Georg sees in her. And it is beautiful. And the best part about it is how it's worth seeing these characters get their chance to shine as a couple near the finale of the movie. This couple has been one of my favorites in all of film. And I think there's more to say that happened earlier in this film that I will go over a bit later to why they've been so special. It's a core element that ties into the film's main themes. But for now, it's just nice to experience such a beautiful cinematic moment. Especially this shot. Just look at how amazing this shot is. Easily the best one in the entire film. Yeah, the top song of Sound of Music, in my opinion, is certainly Something Good. Strangely enough, after something good, the film feels like it's about to wrap up and end. After the last original song, we cut to Maria and Captain Von Trapp's wedding, with a reprise of the Maria song. The conflict of Von Trapp being a bitter man who doesn't appreciate his kids has been resolved, along with the relationship actually developing between him and Maria. Surely this has to be the end of the movie, right? Well, unfortunately not. Not in the sense that the movie gets worse, far from it, but more so the fact the joys of the wedding are put to a halt after the ultimate buzzkillers that ruin everything they touch come into town. Yep, because it is a historical film, there are Nazis involved. And insert obvious joke about how people who might be unfamiliar with this movie did not see this coming at all. Now, Nazis being the bad guys in the movie, in the grand scheme of things, isn't anything new. I mean, it should be very obvious why, because, well, these guys, historically speaking, were not fine people. They caused a lot of suffering for humanity during the times of the 40s, and since then, were rightfully mocked. Most media would portray them in a comedic, insulting way, or as the obvious bad guys for a fictionalized story, if they're mentioned at all. Sometimes they're not even explicitly mentioned in a movie, and you can still tell that they're influenced by the Nazi regime. Yet, many are surprised by this because, well, they don't know the full context of The Sound of Music. They see this as just a big musical from the 60s with fun songs. Nothing as dark and menacing as the Third Reich could ever appear in a movie called The Sound of Music. In actuality, the facts of this being based on true events aren't as well known for some people. It kinda adds to why the Nazis in this aren't even treated as obviously malicious or as big of a part of the story as one would expect compared to other World War II themed movies. Sure, there's small references here and there within this 3-hour movie, but it's not until the end where we see the Nazis are a part of the story. Even then, we don't actively see them doing anything that horrific within the film itself. Outside of threatening the main characters at points, we never actually see a lot of the fascism unfold on screen. On the one hand, people might find this not authentic to showcasing these people being bad. But also consider this. This movie is rated G. It's ultimately a family film and easy for children to watch too. It's not even one of those, oh, how did this get past the MPAA G ratings. It's a harmless film with not really any violence. But it is a good thing, as don't think because this movie is based on a real story, it's going to suddenly turn into Schindler's List or The Zone of Interest in the final moments. If anything, the way you see the Nazis in this movie, if you're watching it as a kid, is actually more or less how the kids in this film see them. You see a lot of nervousness with these intimidating men, but you don't exactly know why. Same goes with the movie, with the kids even calling their flag one with the big spider on it.
Maybe the flag with the black spider on it makes people nervous.
Yeah, totally. Kids will mostly be unaware of the dark undertones, but watching this movie at an older age, you know it's more subtly integrated that they're living under this regime earlier on than most would expect. In fact, it's this very thing that adds to one of the strengths of the film, which are the two leads. Starting with Captain Georg von Trapp, there's a lot to not like about him as first. He is very stern, and serious to a major fault. It is clear this man does not have or understand the appeal of having joy in his life. It's to the point where his kids aren't quite being themselves because he's treating them more like his crew than children. Yet, when thinking about it more, you see why he has become this way. Just on the basis that he recently had lost his wife. It was stated he was much happier and a more actively prone person when his wife was around. So clearly the joy he had in his life died with her, so he's not entirely to blame. Obviously, Maria ended up being the one to restore the family. Even when he had a baroness that he was set up to marry, he ultimately went with Maria. Thankfully, no hard feelings between him and the baroness, but you do have to wonder, how could these two get together? Maria and Georg are two totally different people, with Maria being much more of an optimist and carefree person who does understand kids. Yet, I argue that a strong reason why they got together is actually something we see earlier on that both Georg and Maria have in common. Although he might be a stick in the mud, even during this period, early on in the film, we actually find something to admire about Georg von Trapp. We see that he isn't a bad person because we see that he is willing to stand up to things that are truly wrong. He has the courage to call out horrific acts and tyranny as they are. Nothing but a bunch of power-hungry fascists who just want everything under their control. Georg sees this and feels depressed because this isn't the country he knows and loves. It's being overtaken by a state that is not giving its citizens the freedom they deserve.
You're far away. Where are you?
In a world that's disappearing, I'm afraid.
All because some old asshole in power says this is the way it is. And Georg stands up to that, even earlier on. When he first arrives back from his trip with the Baroness and Max, he calls out Max for being complicit in accepting their overthrowing of Austria.
What's going to happen is going to happen. Just make sure it doesn't happen to you. Max, don't you ever say that again.
Georg lets him know that with all of his passion that this isn't right. And Max is his brother after all. A person he thought would know better. Someone he felt could stand up to this like him, but chooses not to, because it doesn't affect him that negatively. More so later on in the film, when we see more Nazis overthrowing the country.
You know, Max, sometimes I don't believe I know you.
I bring this up because sometimes I see a lot of passes towards what are obvious acts of fascistic behavior from others. Much like Max, maybe not bad people because you probably have a decent relationship with them, but when you see what are obvious malicious people are just getting passed out of someone else's complicitness, even if you love that person, it can feel disheartening. Like, you would think more people would stand up against these kind of people, especially now when they can recognize it in a movie or even through past history. Yet, when right in front of him, they refuse to act. In fact, there are probably even certain people a part of certain movements that they claim are great, might even have watched this movie and even liked it. So they should be aware of this kind of fascist takeover that could be prevented, or at least fought back against, because they've heard about these kinds of stories all the time in the past. They should know about this and know not to let Nazis take advantage of them and other people, because at the end of the day, they're just bullies. Bullies need to be stand up against by everyone, because they might act all tough and mean, but if everyone stands up to them, then they realize they don't have the power they think they have. They shouldn't have any power over you, and you shouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior for anyone that's remotely like a Nazi. This goes to not just the ones from Germany in the 1940s, this goes in general for times back then and now, especially if that tyrant is a washed up, shitty reality show host who undeservingly won an election, despite the fact this insufferable person already was a horrible leader who didn't deserve a second chance, who spent the last 5 years or so just whining about how he lost and just needs to get out of everyone's lives so we can make progress better in the world than this narcissist has. Especially when that narcissist is in the Epstein files and doesn't want anyone to know, despite how obvious it is. Yeah, just because he's American doesn't make him that different. Basically what I'm trying to say is, I didn't grow up watching The Sound of Music ever since I was a baby, just to be told, oh, you have to respect the opinions of Nazis. Anyway, Georg stands up to what he truly believes is wrong. And someone else who does that is, of course, Maria. Not only is she outspoken to what she believes in, but I legitimately believe this is what won over Georg in terms of falling in love with her, due to the fact that she actually stands up to him. She's the one who calls him out for not being the father the children needed. She speaks the truth about how he shouldn't be distant to them, but should be there as they just want a father to love, not to fear.
I said I don't want to hear any more from you about my children.
I know you don't, but you've got to.
Georg doesn't quite believe this at first, until he slowly but surely realizes, due to the gift Maria bestowed upon the children, that she was right all along. It's clear that he actually appreciates the fact that someone called him out and was actually right about it. And instead of putting any blame, he becomes a much better father and person because of it.
I behaved badly. I apologize.
It's nice to see character growth that makes the relationship between Maria and Georg stand out, because this is the thing that they both share. Standing up for what they believe in, whether it be treating children like actual human beings, or standing up against a fascist regime. And alas, I can't mention this movie fighting against Nazis without this incredible moment. Yeah, truly an iconic anti-Nazi moment. Why else did this get a standing ovation at the Hollywood Bowl? Maria and Georg make for a great couple that stick together in the film's final act, where Georg is invited to sing at a performance for the Nazi regime, along with being recruited as part of the Third Reich. This doesn't satisfy Georg, as he refuses to perform, but because things aren't going too well in Austria, he has to sneak his way out with the family. Unfortunately, they get caught, and thus are forced to perform, to showcase that nothing in Austria has changed.
You will all sing. It will demonstrate that nothing in Austria has changed.
But of course, Georg and Maria know that this is not true. They do at least have a few song numbers of reprises of previous songs in the film, and they work with dramatic effect, especially Edelweiss, where in this reprise, Georg feels nervous as this will be his last time singing with the family before joining the party he's so against. But the family joins him on an excellent moment in the film. Some heartbreak within this moment, but it can't be all bad, as the Von Trapp family actually were the main winners of the show. The family Von Trapp!
They're gone!
Yeah, shit is going down in this final act of the movie, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people forget about with The Sound of Music. For a movie that's mostly upbeat and lighthearted, the final 10 to 15 minutes of this movie is actually fairly tense, as now with the Von Trapp family on the loose, the Nazis are after them, which leads the family to hide in Maria's church with the help of the nuns. You wouldn't expect a movie this fun and enjoyable to end with the characters literally hiding for their lives. But to the film's credit, it feels more natural here than other movies. The whole situation feels a bit unsettling, yet despite these characters being very positive throughout the whole movie, they also take the situation as seriously as you do. There are no out-of-place jokes or musical numbers. It's just seeing these characters hide from this regime, and you're just hoping that they won't get caught, as much as the other characters at this moment are. Things are truly dire in this situation, to the point where we hear this line that's honestly kind of heartbreaking when you really think about it.
Mother?
Yes?
Would it help if we sang about our favorite things?
No, darling. This is one time it would not help. You must be very quiet.
The kids ask to sing about their favorite things, but are given a no. This might sound like a bit of plea to bring in something relieving in a rather serious moment, but in actuality, it's more appropriate sequence to showcase how truly frightening this all is. This movie never goes too far with showing any real violence or death, but the implications of them living in a threatening world with uncertainty is still there. You can't blame the children for asking, because this was something they were taught as a coping mechanism. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, or when they're just feeling sad, they sing about their favorite things so they won't feel so bad. Yet, the one time they probably needed to do that the most, they simply can't. All because the situation is so dangerous that they have to be quiet, so they can't get caught by those who want to restrict children from having that freedom to sing and have joy in their lives just so they can appease to a higher power. It pains me so much to see kids who've finally been able to express themselves now having to revert to that because a power has taken over their country will not let them be themselves. Now, hearing all of that right now, and thinking about everything that has happened in worlds like this where fascism can end up thriving in the name of saving the children, all I ask for someone watching this, especially if you have or are associated with kids of any kind, is this. Does this sound like a world you want to have your children grow up in? That's what I thought. To make matters a bit worse, Liesel finds out the unfortunate truth about Rolf. He's working for the bad guys this whole time. And of course this is heartbreaking for Liesel. Even if, and I hate to sound mean considering Liesel's a good character, but considering she's still 16 going on 17, I'm not sure if it would even last, even if he wasn't a Nazi. Thankfully though, Rolf does end up being confronted by Georg von Trapp. Even held at gunpoint, Georg doesn't flinch, and instead just becomes an all-around badass for standing up against a fascist regime by telling this young man the real truth.
You'll never be one of them.
Lieutenant! The downside is the regime is still chasing the Von Trapps, as they are aware of their whereabouts. Fortunately, God is on the Von Trapp's side, as they manage to successfully escape thanks to an act of fate to prevent the Nazis from succeeding.
Reverend Mother, I have sinned.
I too, Reverend Mother. What is this sin, my children?
Remember, kids, it's not a sin to screw over a Nazi. Thus, the film ends with the family hiking among the mountains of Austria, where they leave their home to flee to Switzerland, creating for a brand new journey away from the fascist regime, where they still keep that musical spirit alive. So now that we have gone over one of the most classic films of cinema, one question does remain. Why did I in particular decide to pick this film of all movies to do a review on? The Sound of Music has been hailed as a cinematic classic for over half a century now. What else could I have added to the discussion of this movie? Especially when this is a bit different compared to the other newer films I've covered on my channel. Well, truth be told, despite not being around when this movie was first released, The Sound of Music is actually one of the main movies I've grown up with, big time, that isn't necessarily an animated or kids film. Even when I was younger, this movie was a big deal to my family, and I've watched it quite a few times over the years. Apparently when I was like really little, I guess I was engaged through the whole thing, which is kind of amazing for me to sit through a long movie like that when I was basically a baby. But it's clear that I've always had a fondness for this movie. Even when I hadn't rewatched it and moved on to other movies, I still had a fondness for it whenever it was mentioned. Hell, it even got me to appreciate other things, like, oddly enough, Lady Gaga. Yeah, I hate to say it, but I was one of those guys who used to not like her music and found her to be annoying. But eventually I grew to tolerate her music better, and discovered that she truly has talent. Case in point, how she gave tribute to this movie at the 2015 Oscars. Yeah, Gaga, you did this movie justice, and I'm happy for it. I take back everything I said about you back during my angsty new music sucks phase. So it's clear that The Sound of Music is something that I've always appreciated, but what makes it stand out in my mind more nowadays than everything else? This went from a movie I liked a lot to a movie that I think is so much better now as an adult. It helps that gaining more of an appreciation of film and art over the years really made me notice more things in films and storytelling now that are in this film that make it so much more enjoyable to go back to. It's not just a nostalgia fix. As someone who's grown to appreciate cinematography, editing, acting, and character arcs more as time goes on, The Sound of Music just keeps getting better with age. It means so much to me that now in the year 2025, I honestly think more people should revisit this movie. Not only because it's a great film, but it also has a very good message that I think now is more relevant than ever. See, if you're living in certain places, you might feel like some people are acting very similar to the antagonists in this film. And seeing how many people are just shrugging off this sort of behavior is making me feel very similar to Captain Von Trapp in this movie. I feel we are better than this. And some people who might let this kind of behavior slide, I know have seen this movie and are aware of fascism being labeled as a bad thing. Yet, when close by, it feels like it isn't noticed, and because it's labeled under one thing, it has to feel as nothing in this country has changed, when it has, and for the worse. So, my message to anyone watching this video, revisit this film, and consider what would Maria and Georg von Trapp do, as they would be the kind of people who would stand up against what is wrong with the world, to make it so the things we love in our homes are protected. Take a page from them, speak out, and stand against any sort of tyranny that is making life harder for those living here. Don't let the Nazis and anyone like them push you and others around, because in reality, they're not as strong as they think. Where they fight for a world that's cruel and hard for no real reason, we fight for a world that's kind and empathetic for the things we love, that we want future generations to have. An opportunity for kids of the future to climb every mountain, ford every stream, and follow every rainbow, in a way where people as horrific as the Nazis would not preventing them from finding their dreams. So take that for what it's worth.